So again, good morning and welcome to UC Santa Barbara's Office of Admissions Counselor webinar series. My name is Guca Acosta. I'm the Associate Director for Admission here at UC Santa Barbara, and it is a pleasure to be with you today. Our topic, well, it's UCSB's admission with a lens on the College of Engineering. So please note that we'll spend roughly 30 minutes together talking about our College of Engineering and in particular, the admissions review process. I'll remind everyone if there are questions to use the Q&A or the chat feature. And with that, let's get started. So Santa Barbara's College of Engineering happens to be a smaller program in the UC system. So if you look at the University of California campuses, you'll see engineering schools with 5, 6, 7,000 students. We hover roughly around 1,700. This is actually the largest enrollment of our engineering program in history. So you're going to find that over the course of 4 years and our 5 undergraduate programs, there are almost 1,700 students. This is small when you think about freshman, sophomore, junior, senior standing across those majors. Santa Barbara, though, does maintain a 10-to-1 student to faculty ratio for undergraduate students in the College of Engineering, which is probably one of the reasons why students really gravitate towards applying to UCSB. I would be remiss, though, if I didn't share our UC overview and share the campus structure as a whole. Roughly 23,000 undergraduate students at UC Santa Barbara and less than 3,000 graduate students. So undergraduates really are the bulk of our enrollment at UCSB. Now, when it comes to Santa Barbara's campus, excuse me, I'll point out 3 Nobel Prize winners are directly in the College of Engineering, 6 total at UCSB. So you'll see there's some dynamic faculty on our campus, including our College of Engineering. Now, when it comes to enrollment and admissions, one of the things I need to be clear about is that we're talking about undergraduate admissions. And so that includes our freshman and our transfer path for UCSB. Regardless of that path, though, the College of Engineering houses 5 undergraduate programs that are listed on the screen as computer science, computer engineering, chemical engineering, electrical engineering, and mechanical engineering. So when it comes to admissions, we will directly admit a student into one of those 5 programs. And as such, each student who's applying to us will be asked, what is your engineering major? You'll see this later on, but I'll say it now. We don't have an undeclared engineering option at UC Santa Barbara. Okay, so what are the differences between the majors? What should my students be doing? How do they know the difference between one and the other? They're so young. And yes, we've heard all of that. But the path for the engineering programs at UC Santa Barbara are structured 4-year programs. Students will take engineering coursework in their first year, and that foundation coursework is sort of sequential. They'll see themselves in curriculum that elevates from freshman to sophomore year, from sophomore to junior year, if a student transfers in from junior to senior year. And as such, that means students must pick between their majors. Now, there are videos that the College of Engineering has created to talk about each of the engineering majors, which will hopefully give students a better grasp of what it means to pick between majors, pick between departments. The principles and what's been researched on our campus tends to give students a better understanding of what's the right fit for me. So for example, chemical engineering has fundamentals and different principles in science, but there are research areas that include materials and interfaces, bioengineering, modeling, theory simulations. And so a student might sort of gravitate towards those particular themes. When it comes to understanding the difference between computer engineering versus computer science, hardware, software. And so students can talk to us about the different programs. We do presentations throughout the year with our College of Engineering advising and faculty so that students can get a better grasp of what is the right fit for me. And partially because, again, we admit into the major, students won't find a lot of flexibility to switch within the College of Engineering if admitted to Santa Barbara. So if I'm admitted as an electrical engineer, can I switch over to computer science? The answer to that is it's not guaranteed and it's not always something that's allowed. And so it's really important for students to know those differences, but to also know that the 5 core programs at Santa Barbara are overarching programs. And as such, students will have the opportunity and the ability to see sort of themes within it. For example, I might really be interested in robotics. Well, that's a stream set of courses within mechanical engineering. So students can find that type of information on our YouTube channel. I'm going to share links at the end of this presentation for you. Now, I hope that regardless of what you're interested in, that you find yourself thinking, okay, my student knows that they want to be an engineer. My student knows that they're interested in understanding engineering, but they didn't get admitted to Santa Barbara's engineering program. What can they do? Well, hopefully you know this. A student's major and their title doesn't always reflect their career options. And so we do have quite a few students who find themselves in our technology management set of courses, doing research with engineers, with engineering faculty. So this is a great opportunity that is open to every single student on our campus, regardless of their major. Now, our technology management certificate is something that a student does not need to apply to. So on the UC application, there is no button for minors or certificates. So Santa Barbara students, once they enroll after being admitted, can find themselves doing some research on the College of Engineering and our technology certificate. It's also a great resource for your students who are interested in business. Over 60 startups have come from our technology certificate, and students will find themselves really excited about our venture capitalist competition. That QR code on the screen will take you to the new venture program competition for this past year, showing some of our great students pitching their business plan and their research to entrepreneurs in the local community. You'll see under the new venture program some of the startups that have come from our undergraduate students and sort of that kind of excitement for UCSB. Okay, but you really want to hear about admissions. That's the goal of this session. So I'm going to focus the meat and bones of our presentation on the admissions review. So of course, admissions always starts with the University of California application. Now, when a student selects Santa Barbara as a campus where they want to apply, they will then be asked at UCSB, what is your intended major? We have 3 undergraduate colleges at UCSB: the College of Letters and Science, the College of Engineering, and the College of Creative Studies. So I'll point that out: College of Letters and Science, College of Engineering, College of Creative Studies. When a student clicks on the College of Engineering, the 5 undergraduate majors will appear. Now, a student needs to make their engineering choice their first choice major. And I'll highlight that first choice major just says major within the application. But a student who clicks on major will then be shown that a gray box in particular, will appear. Now, that gray box is instruction to the student saying, you are adding a first choice major that is selective at admission. So please think about adding an alternate major. So as a counselor, here's where I need your help. The question that students need to answer is, do I want UCSB more than I want engineering? Or is the only reason I would say yes to UCSB is if I were admitted as an engineer? Now, if it's the former, I want UCSB more than I want engineering, then a student who adds that alternate major, a second choice in something like undeclared, data science, physics, something outside of engineering. If a student does not receive admission to engineering, we can and do look at their second choice major for admission selection. But the reverse is not true. So if a student marks undeclared as their first choice and engineering as their second choice, we will not evaluate them for an engineering spot at UCSB. All right, I said that. I'm going to remind you that the Q&A and the chat is available. So if I'm saying anything that's confusing, please stop me and have me clarify. Now, when it comes to Santa Barbara's campus, we do oftentimes get students who get admitted into their alternate major and they sit there going, well, why? I'm a great student. Why? And we have to point out that for many students, we know that they're a great student, hence the reason we admitted them to an alternate major. But students who are not admitted to engineering, it's not because they're not great, it's because of space limitations. And so what does an engineering review look like and how is it that space comes into play? Let's talk about freshman admissions first and foremost. So our freshman admissions process at UC Santa Barbara is looking at the requirements, right? Students in California completing their A through G coursework, math, history, English, science, art, language other than English, and college prep electives, A through G. Those 15 core classes being done by the end of senior year. Now, that's general for every student. But when we look at engineers, we're going to focus on math performance. So that means at least a pre-calculus by senior year. Now, I get this all the time. My student doesn't have a calculus class in senior year. They have something else. So I'm asking for a pre-calculus completed, and it could be before senior year. Some students are really on that math track. But students who don't have that pre-calculus won't have exposure to calculus in general, which will put them at a disadvantage for UCSB's College of Engineering. All first-year freshmen in engineering across all 5 majors will have a calculus-based curriculum, and no exposure to it means that they won't be successful. So that's what one of my engineering faculty told me, and that's what I'm sharing with you. So the goal, students are at least exposed to calculus, and pre-calculus is that exposure. I get this question a lot, so let me already preempt it with, what if my student is well above calculus? Do they have an advantage? And the answer is technically no. So think of it as a checkbox. Do they have that math? Do they have that pre-calculus? Check. There's not a second checkbox that says, are they in a calculus or a college calculus? Are they in advanced calculus BC? It's not that level of nuance. Now, when it comes to math progress, it's not just about taking the class, but it's being successful in it. So that is one thing, the GPA that a student has. Students who have mastered the subject with A's, so much stronger than students who struggled with the subject in C's, right? And so note that when it comes to GPA performance, that math grade, that math coursework is going to be relevant at UCSB. Now I'm throwing in some FAQs, questions that we constantly get from counselors and from students. And one of the biggest ones we get for engineering students is statistics, calculus, right? Which one should I take? And I know you know the answer, so say it with me now. Calculus. I'd rather see that calculus than I would a statistics class in senior year. All right, let's keep going. Now, our admissions criteria, that academic review, is one of our 2 steps in our holistic or comprehensive review. That's a whole different workshop and session for counselors. So please note that I won't go into more depth about all of those nuances, but I will say that when it comes to admission at UC Santa Barbara, the faculty at UCSB have asked the admissions office to not just use one, not even 2, but to look at different sections of the application and different factors to understand how a student would be successful inside and outside of the classroom. So this is called comprehensive review. So this is where we look at what a student does outside of the classroom. And no revelation here, hopefully. That is, we don't expect engineers to have engineering extracurricular activities. Oh, that's something new. Okay. So if you didn't know this, I don't expect a student to have a computer science club or a robotics club because they're a computer science or a mechanical engineering major. I don't. One, it's not consistent across the United States. It's not something that every high school has. And as such, it would be a disadvantage to students if we made that requirement. So instead, we ask, how did a student get involved in what was available to them? So if it's music, if it's art, did they have a job? Were they in sports? Our engineers and their extracurriculars, well, they're all over the place. So as we review students, we look for three key things. We look for that commitment piece, multiple years of the same activity or activities, plural. We look for progression, that they're learning and growing from their activities. And of course, we also look for leadership, whatever that ends up being. And for some students, that leadership component could be and has been things that are very nuanced, right? I'm not the president of my club, but I'm the one that coordinates all of our meetings. I'm not the captain of the team, but I'm the one running drills with the coach. So leadership doesn't have to have that title. This is one of the big things for engineers. They don't always brag about how they accomplish their accomplishments. And so it's really important for students to give us that information. Those are often the nuances that change our opinion for engineering students. Okay, so what happens? Well, we do that academic review with that math focus. We then do our holistic review. What did the student do? And that holistic review is what we call a non-academic review. And that all merges together to eventually give the student a score. Now, I'm not going to talk about the nuances of scoring and all of that information. That's a whole other session for UCSB. Now, when it comes to Santa Barbara's admission, I will remind you that we have freshman and transfer review. So we're going to talk about transfer in a second. Thanks for those of you who asked that in the chat. So when it comes to admissions review, we don't compare students to one another. So that's a really big piece. And this is not just engineering, it's UCSB freshman admission in general. We're not looking at, should I take Kuka or should I take Chelly? It's not a conversation of that. It isn't really something that we're able to do at UCSB, because that would mean one person would have to read every single applicant to be knowledgeable about that factor. And that's just not the reality for UCSB. So here's what happens. A student is reviewed for engineering. If they're not selected into one of the 5 majors that they've chosen as their first choice, then a student will be reviewed for their alternate major. And so they get put into the bucket, if you will, of our UCSB admission outside of engineering. That student could be admitted to their alt major, or they could be denied to UCSB. Now, when it comes to students who are admitted into their major, I got admitted into mechanical engineering, for example, they can choose to accept that admission. And I got this question this year, so I'm going to say this one out loud to everybody, and that was, well, I've changed my mind. I no longer want to be in engineering. I know that my passion is now data science. For those students who get admitted into an engineering major, they are admitted to UCSB. So at that point, they can choose to leave the College of Engineering, though the opposite is not true. Okay, so that was a lot of information. I hope that made sense to everybody. I'll remind you that the Q&A is there for you. So now let's talk about transfer admissions. Now, when it comes to transfer admissions, Santa Barbara, like all the UC campuses, admits students at a junior level, which means we're asking for 60 semester credits to be completed by the spring prior to enrollment. I'm pointing out our webinar series because we have a playlist that's phenomenal on UCSB transfer, and there are multiple videos that I highly encourage students to look at. For this purposes, for this video, it's the College of Engineering transfer overview. Because for Santa Barbara's campus, we're not just looking at the general admission to transfer, that 7-course pattern, so on and so forth. We're asking students in particular to take their calculus for science majors, to take linear algebra and differential equations. I know those math courses again. Why? Well, transfer students are essentially taking the fundamental coursework that freshman and sophomore students would be taking if they were in the College of Engineering. Because again, you're coming in your 3rd year of study and you have to hit the ground running in your engineering coursework. So transfer selection is going to include those required courses. I'm going to underline that word, required courses. Now, I might be attending a California community college, and my college doesn't offer the engineering class that UCSB wants for mechanical engineering or electrical engineering. I can skip it, right? No, no, that's actually not an option. Students are required to take the engineering coursework, and that would mean finding an alternate college or university that has that articulated coursework for engineering. Now, when it comes to admission selection at the transfer level, it is still selective. There are more students who apply than there are spaces. And as such, we ask students to exceed a 3.6 GPA in their transferable coursework. That puts them in a more solid footing for selection at UCSB. Now, if you're thinking, okay, the 5 programs, I just have to take that calculus for science and math majors, that linear algebra. Well, actually, there's a few extra classes that we're asking students to complete as well. So we've created what's called a transfer major preparation guide for our College of Engineering students. That sort of teal color is going to designate our College of Engineering majors. So as I said, we're asking students to take their linear algebra, their differential equations, and some students might find that that's the foundation, but on top of that, their direct major might have more. So for example, I'm a computer science transfer student. Well, I now have to take discrete math. I have to take data structures in C++. These are those required courses. Even if my community college where I'm a student doesn't offer them, I still have to take them somewhere else. This is not something we hide. We are very public. We actually do monthly webinars on what we call selective majors for transfer. So as you're advising students at the high school or the community college where you're currently at, and you run into a student who has a UCSB engineering goal in mind, we highly encourage them to connect not just with their community college transfer center, but also with UCSB and our transfer advisors so that we can make sure that the information is locked in and accurate. Oftentimes we make changes and not everybody's aware of those, specifically for transfer. Some of these courses are sequential in nature, and as such, delaying getting into them and registering for them could delay the time frame in which a student is eligible to transfer and apply. Okay, we're getting there. I'm close to that 30-minute marker, so let me keep going a little bit faster. And that is the same concept holds true for a transfer student. We will look at a student's alternate major if they're not selective for admission. So for example, I'm a student who decided that they wanted to transfer to UCSB in computer science. That was my first choice major, but I didn't take C++ programming. But I was actually also thinking about being in UCSB's data science major, so that's my second choice. Note that we'll be able to review a student for that second choice major if noted in the UC application. All right. I didn't make a slide about this, but I love the question in the chat, and that is, can students change their major through the application process? So thank you for asking that. And the answer is yes, but but there are time frames by which we allow for a change of major. So for example, I'm a freshman applicant. There's going to be a window in December and January that opportunity is there for me, right? I'm sorry, I'm a transfer student. So in December and January, I can change my major. But as a transfer student, after that TAU deadline, your major is locked in. So you can't change it at that point in time. Freshman applicants this year had until December to complete that request. And so it's so important for a student to do research. I know you tell them over and over again. So from our office to your counseling office, thank you for being there and helping students through the process of thinking about changing or confirming their major. Okay, last 3 slides, and that is some frequently asked questions. Again, does UCSB have an undeclared engineering major? And the answer is no. There's too much structure within our College of Engineering to have that free flow. Students need to hit the ground running from their first day at UCSB in the engineering program of their choice. So I get this question a lot. I threw it out there specifically from counselors, and that is, what is the most selective engineering major? And it varies from year to year, truth be told. So students will find themselves going, well, what's the most selective? And I often think that it's their way of trying to find an entrance into UCSB and engineering. So this year it was computer science. Next year it could be mechanical. Again, it changes. And so students shouldn't worry about those statistics. They need to worry about the selection and process of their application being as accurate as possible and picking the major that they see as the right fit for them. I get this from counselors all the time, and we sometimes have this data at counselor conference, but not always. And so that is how many spaces are available in each engineering program. And this is the part that I think you're going to understand completely as a counselor. And that is, we don't actually have a space allocation when the application is available to us. I don't know how many engineering spots I'll have in each of the 5 majors when your students apply. And that's because we do graduation checks, right? How many students graduated from the major? We do enrollment checks. Of the students we admitted last year, how many actually showed up and how many stayed in the major? All of that happens. And as we're in a quarter school, yep, fall, winter, spring quarter, that information's happening in October and November. And so we don't have access to that data usually until the middle of our engineering review. And so I will say this out loud one more time. When it comes to our comprehensive review, we're evaluating, we're reading, and then we're scoring a student. And that score gets attached to a student's record. But no one person is saying yes or no to an offer of admission for a student. I'm not admitting or denying a student into engineering. I'm scoring that student, and then that score is going to be reflective later on in our process. Okay, did I hit the 30-minute marker? So close. So now that we have your FAQs posted, those commonly asked questions, I ask you, what did I not answer for you? So it's your time to open up that chat, to open up that Q&A, and to say how I can help you understand our admissions process a little better. Looks like you all like the chat more than anything else, so let me open that back up. Boom, 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 boom. All right. So question number 1, and that is, are you able to see what your student applied to? So Santa Barbara will take requests for applicants, but we don't necessarily have access to show you a portal where you can see your student's application. Your students usually tell you directly. Question number 2. Well, there's only 2 questions. Okay. I guess I was thorough. So question number 2 that we have here is, you mentioned change of major. So when a student gets admitted, they can't change their major. Thank you for asking and clarifying. And the answer is actually that a student can, to an extent, change their major after their admission decision is posted. We actually have a change of major web page. Let me grab that and post it into the chat for you. One of the things that's important though is a change of major out of engineering. Totally easy. If a student gets admitted and then they say, never mind, that's not what I wanted anymore, they can, and they have, emailed the Office of Admissions requesting a College of Letters and Science major. But the opposite is not true. They got admitted to UCSB in history and physics and data science and undeclared, and now they want to be an engineer. I won't guarantee that. And in fact, we take those requests from students and we hold on to them until after the SIR deadline, that statement of intent to register. So here's the timeline. That SIR date hits, and then we'll look. Are there open spaces in any of the 5 engineering programs? If the answer is yes, then we go back to see who did we admit that got admitted to an alternate major. And that student might be great, and they might be great in the program, but there wasn't space, but now there is. So we could often flip that student from that second major that they posted to engineering. Or maybe they've got an alternate major because they're a good student, but they weren't close to our engineering review. So I've already put students on the wait list. students who are engineers on the wait list. So that's my second place to look. And so that process happens usually automatically for students after admissions decisions and SIR is complete. So here's the last statement I'll say, and that is if your student got admitted to UCSB as a non-engineer, then if they say yes to Santa Barbara, it is with the expectation that they will not be an engineer at UCSB. I know that was really serious. I'm sorry. But I just think it's as clear as possible to say that and to share that with your families. Okay, so I don't see any additional questions in the chat. Let me open that Q&A. Nothing there either. So I will say thank you so much for joining me. I greatly appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be with me. As a reminder, this webinar is recorded and then posted on UCSB's counselor resource page. It is going to be linked in the chat for your reference. You'll see a counselor resource playlist. So by the end of the week, this video will be there for you with additional links and resources. If you've got a request for a topic, something that you would love for us to talk about in one of our counselor webinars, please don't hesitate to fill out the interest form and suggest a webinar. With that, I thank you for joining me. I wish you a wonderful and magical spring. I know that as we closely get to the month of May, it's a little more hectic. So I thank you for all of the work you do on behalf of the Office of Admissions. And with that, I'll say, have a great day. Looking forward to seeing you at our next counselor webinar.